Good afternoon and welcome. This is the second recording of the fifth webinar for the Transitioning from the Bucket to the Barrel webinar series. We were having technical difficulties yesterday, so this is a re-recording. We're going to address all the questions that were asked in yesterday's live webinar, and I'm going to go ahead and kick it off. The title for today's presentation is Are There Enough Loggers to Meet Cellulosic Demand? And Duncan will be our presenter. And a little background on Doug. He's currently the Executive Director of the North Carolina Association of Professional Loggers. His association promotes economic development and is a strong business advocate for its logging and partner members. Doug has a Bachelor's of Science from North Carolina State University in Forestry and a Master's of Science Full Science with a minor in statistics from the University of Florida. Doug has a background in forest research, land management, and wood procurement with International Paper, and also worked as the Director of Logging, Safety, and Transportation for the North Carolina Forestry Association. While at the North Carolina Forestry Association, he developed and implemented the first nationally recognized professional logger training program. He was also a regional manager for Logging Equipment Company before assuming his current position with the North Carolina Association of Professional Loggers in 2007. During his spare time, Doug manages his tree farm, likes to restore classic cars, avid hunter, and finder gigs. He currently resides in Cary with his wife, Rhea, has 2 nearby daughters, and also has 2 energetic granddaughters. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Doug to provide you with a background and overview on the situation that the Southeast is facing.
Thank you, Helene. Our topic today is, are there enough loggers to meet cellulosic demand? I actually want to address all demands, be it cellulosic or traditional products, since they are intertwined. Today we've got 4 areas of discussion. This is not a report of research findings, but rather a collection of observations and opinions. We will also have a North Carolina flavor to this presentation and also mention some Southwide trends. Our association's network with loggers, partner members involved in traditional forest products, equipment sales, vendors, trucking, so we get a lot of information, a lot of input from diversified groups on this topic. We did not produce this presentation based on the results of a survey of our members, but that might not be a bad idea for the future, as there are any number of different topics and ways to bring opinion to bear on this subject of logging capacity. Today we'll first hit areas of concern, trends, talk about some strategies and some outcomes that could be possible, and then we'll reserve time at the end for some questions and responses. First of all, with areas of concern, we want to address new market areas of concern first. This would be folks involved in fuel chips, wood pellets, and biofuels. Many of these new markets are unfamiliar with the wood supply chain. The fact that we've got a very integral network of landowners, loggers, brokers, trucking, competing markets that would be competing for their own specific product, and also what I'm calling complementary markets, that being our traditional markets. The whole premise of timber harvest, of course, is to achieve the highest possible value on all products, not specific products per se, so the traditional markets are absolutely involved and part of this whole logging capacity question. How do you secure long-term agreements with these new markets? Well, most of these requests for long-term agreements often originate from investment companies and also requirements of the end user. So that's an area of concern. The ability to limit risk in new markets by securing long-term agreements on feedstock and delivery. So that is a concern for them. Also, these new markets have a single focus product. It is very much dependent on harvest being driven by much higher values. Landowner, of course, is going to try to achieve the highest value for all products, as mentioned. In many cases, the new market feedstock is of secondary or tertiary value, but it is driven by the harvest of higher value products. Also, some of the concerns of new markets are that it's almost impossible to secure contracts on timber and to drive just that single product to their facility. So again, just an added emphasis that there are secondary and primary products involved in timber harvest, and in many cases the secondary nature of that product is what the new markets are after. This good example of a specific product, I don't think you'll be making much of anything out of that except fuel chips. Traditional markets or complementary markets also have some concerns. They like having lots of loggers. Abundant loggers predicates lower delivery prices. The opposite could be true. We're also seeing solid wood facilities, plywood, OSB plants, pallet markets are on the rebuild curve. The past logger shortage was not an issue with decreased mill deliveries. 2008, 2009, I don't think anybody had ever heard of the term logging capacity. It's a recent phenomena based on additional demands of expanding new markets and also the rebuild of traditional markets. Many of the traditional markets fear the not necessarily the competition for the same materials, feedstock materials, but more for the competition of the loggers that'll be providing those materials, and we'll elaborate on that a little bit further at a later point.
Doug, it looks like that last point you made,
there is a concern for loggers. Typical questions: where's the long-term profitability in my logging business? The audio is going out. Okay, so the logger's concern is where is the long-term profitability in my operation? When do I renew or purchase capital assets to continue my business? How to maintain a safe and productive and dependable workforce. The days of picking up labor on a street corner are gone. Safety requirements, productivity requirements, and dependability are all things that are paramount to a logger as far as his employees are concerned. And an important question are where are all the truckers? How's my transportation going to occur? Newspapers are full of ads from long-haul trucking companies looking to put people on the highway. The folks in our industry are typically short haul, or what we call lunchbox truckers, and they are in short demand. There are some trends affecting logging capacity that I'd like to cover briefly. There has been a 30% decline in North Carolina logging businesses from 2001 to 2010. These are numbers that come from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Some related numbers: Virginia is a 28% decline, South Carolina is 43% decline, Southwide is 34%. That was mostly alluded to by a recent study at Mississippi State that took a look at Southwide numbers and individual state numbers on decline in logging businesses. Our professional logging businesses have downsized, in principle, to weather the economy. They're good, solid professional loggers that saw the need and the desire to stay in business, but knew they also had to downside due to reduced demand in their product and their services. These professional loggers can just as readily upsize. In North Carolina in particular, we have a great landowner ethic as far as growing timber. As long as we've got markets on the other end of the supply chain, then the loggers will be there. If they're good professional loggers, they've typically got good finance history, so they can upsize. One of the limiting factors might be the skilled labor that they need to upsize, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on also. But these professional loggers know the business principles, and they're able to respond in an uptick in the demand for their services. Possibly they were slow to downsize. The attitude and work ethic of loggers is they like their business, they like the work that they're in. They've weathered the ups and downs, but we've had a severe downtrend, so they may have been slow to downsize, possibly looking for the rebound to come, which was very slow to come. They possibly may also be slow to upsize unless they have some confidence that new markets are there and the profitability is there for their investment. If they have new markets that appear or reopen markets, then that's going to be an encouragement to them to upsize in a quicker fashion. Some other trends for loggers are they are most optimistic in their business when they're experiencing overlapping market zones for similar products. They also are encouraged in contracts when there's an inclusion of diesel fuel pricing. Many a logger that we talk to, with the increase in diesel fuel prices, both off-road and on-road, increases that we saw back around 2007 for a couple years, basically sucked all the profit out of their weekly production. Being able to index contracts to published diesel fuel pricing has been an important item that many mills have added to their contracts, and that's been a plus for the logging side. The availability of trucking again is a concern. The trend is, as we discussed, is a shortage of trucking. The ability to schedule those loads and get them delivered to the mill is a constant challenge. Also, being able to have skilled operators. We find that in rural areas there is a high unemployment rate, typically southwide. In North Carolina, it's upwards to 10%. But being able to find folks that want to stay in their communities, that want to be skilled operators, it's going to take kind of an extra emphasis from our industry to make sure those folks are sought out, proper training is provided, and they're placed in those jobs because they are needed as these loggers expand their capacity. And also the trend is for higher profitability. A logger that can be profitable is a stable business entity, just like any other business, more likely to be of service in the supply chain to the folks he's delivering to as he is profitable. Some additional trends that we see are spot market purchasing has always been the norm in the South. When I say that, basically the lowest cost producer is encouraged. We have no futures or commodity trading available for timber products. This is an impact to new market investors because many of these folks come from an energy trading background where you can actually purchase futures and options in coal and natural gas and electricity. So they're somewhat uncomfortable with the spot purchasing that occurs on feedstock that they may be using in their facilities. We're also seeing overseas purchasers in particular pushing for long-term agreements. Again, this is a business model to reduce their risk. Unfortunately, the South is not in the long-term supply contracts, basically due to our land ownership patterns. Mostly private ownership. Many private landowners, forest landowners, don't exactly know when that timber is being harvested. The ability for an expanding market to come in or a new market to come in and lock down their feedstock requirements for 10 years is almost an impossibility. We also have the spot purchasing tradition, and if the feedstock is available and it's purchased on a spot market basis, again, it happens. We've got many successful mills across the South and have been in existence for 50 years or longer. and it works for them. But being able to assure investment groups and folks outside our industry has been somewhat challenging to assure them that the materials are there and they can be delivered. Some other trends is that our traditional or complementary markets have lost touch with logging financials. Since the 70s, there's been a major move to go to independent logging contractors. Most of our forest industry procurement staff are focused on delivered cost, possibly less on logging profitability, and that's more of a relation of not being in the woods more, not being directly with the logging force and understanding their financial challenges. We're blessed with technology these days, but it also could be a curse in that if you can conduct most of your procurement business from a laptop or a cell phone, that in many cases eliminates the personal contact with the loggers and maybe not understanding what they are faced with on a financial situation week to week or month to month. Also wanted to cover a term, oligopoly, as it relates to our forest products industry. It's halfway between a monopoly and a free market. It's a market form where an industry is dominated by a small number of firms. A good example of this outside of our industry is 4 major cell phone companies in the U.S. dominate over 89% of the market. Each one of these companies operates aware of the actions of the others. And again, I want to relate this to our forest products industry. The decisions of one firm influences the decisions of the others, and this goes for price setting and also for retail sale of the final product. So this is just kind of the nature of the business that we're in. Our forest products situation involves both pricing, which influences raw materials, and again that of the finished product. Kind of complicating that somewhat is our transportation issues. Transportation costs reduce competition for a product by more or less creating regional markets. An example of that is that you can't haul pulpwood but so far before your transport cost exceeds the delivered value of the product. So naturally our industry is concentrated more into regional or market zones. Another example of this is if you've got a higher value product, you can operate farther off. For instance, you can haul potato chips farther than you can potatoes. Our transportation zones are fairly well established for our traditional markets, but this may change. When you have a new market coming in that, for instance, may produce biofuels, the value of that finished product, the transportation fuels themselves, may exceed the value of traditional products made from the same feedstock. So as these industries come to play, we may see procurement zones that reach farther out and more of an overlap with our traditional zones. Talk a little bit about strategies and outcomes. We've talked a little bit about concerns, talked about trends. Now let's talk about some possible strategies or some outcomes of our situation. New markets have been very quickly to employ traditional procurement managers at startup. The question might be, will it remain long term if these companies, new market companies, are seeking an edge on procurement? It is truly a relationship businesses, and new business might mean new faces and new approaches to procurement. So it'll be interesting to see the type of procurement organizations that evolve based on new markets coming to play. We're also seeing our wood pellet plants being built at a larger scale and have significant feedstock requirements, possibly to the small or medium size of a paper mill pulpwood consumption. So that has also changed in recent years. And on the future horizon, we're still looking at biofuel plants as having an impact. They again will dominate cellulosic material for production of a high value product. And just kind of to recap and go back to this first point on procurement organizations, in many cases the edge that procurement organizations could have in the future is back to the basics of the relationships, and loggers want to do business with you. This could relate to the types of contracts being offered, our truck turnaround time, pricing, eliminating problems, just an overall ease in doing business. So, the folks that I think are going to excel are the ones that possibly reinvent themselves or see a better way to handle the procurement side of their business. We're also seeing as an outcome that finance companies are now rebounding to work with loggers, not just the expected equipment finance companies such as Caterpillar or John Deere, but banks are now becoming more involved, and farm credit organizations, and going after business with loggers. So also are seeing more new markets talk about long-term contracts to stabilize their feedstock delivery prices and use less spot market. That remains to be seen if that
so it sounds a little off on your speaker there.
Again, that's part of the eliminating the risk of your business model. So that's what let's see discussed, but to date, we've not seen any real examples of that taking place. Loggers are concerned about skilled operators and health and safety training programs. Our organization, the NCAPL, originally operator training program years and ran out 2 years ago program with the support of pioneer great parts, also NCAPL products. We're very pleased with that program, and we identified a critical need a few years back, skilled operators, trying to fill that void as our loggers rebound in that business. Another outcome that we're seeing with these markets is that logging equipment manufacturers are typically behind on the orders. That means folks are purchasing equipment and seeing if they can be profitable in their operation. Again, just a credit to our sponsors for our 4-off training program. We appreciate what they do for us, and we are seeing successes in training skilled basic entry logging operators, and also placing them in needed positions for logging businesses. Some more strategies and outcomes. There's a new breed of logger out there who has decided to diversify into trucking and also timber buying functions. These folks are running multiple crews. They may even be purchasing enough timber to have their own contract logging companies working underneath them. Weekly production may have increased from 50 to 100 loads a week up to the 200 to 300 load range. So there is a new type of logger out there, and those folks seem to be growing in numbers. We're also seeing that certification programs are not going to limit expansion of markets in North Carolina and other parts of the South. Landowners and loggers are continuing to do the right thing for the right reasons. We've got a good track record in sustainable business. The discussions on who pays the cost of certification, I think, will also continue. Just to kind of wrap up the areas of concern, trends, some of the strategies and outcomes. Is there a logger field of dreams? Getting right to the heart of the question about enough logging capacity for everybody. We believe there is. Nearly 80% of the professional logging businesses in play today are expected to expand to meet new and also traditional markets. But the question there is they have to be profitable to do so, just like any other business. The other 20% are typically expected to come from those people in rural areas who've watched logging as a friend or relative, they're drawn to the lifestyle, and they're possibly willing to take the risk. The other sideline to this answer is that the real question may be is who can be financed and who can't. If the financial institutions are willing to take a risk on somebody to get them started, I think that's going to be a big element to these folks on the 20% end who may not have had a track record in this type of business. Well, at this time, I'd like to kind of pause for some question and response time. We had a number of questions from the first session. I'll turn it over to Helene, and we'll go ahead and try to respond to those questions. Helene?
Thank you, Doug. Yeah, it appears that there was a couple of audio problems through your presentation, but it was just on a couple of slides, and I'd just like to invite people who are listening, if there was something that you really needed to hear that you're unable to, please feel free to contact Doug. His information here is on the screen. Give him a call, 919-271-9050. He's got his email there as well, and his website. There just seems to be some problems with the audio. We've tried everything, so this is our second go around, and about 95% of it was clear. So apologize if that's an inconvenience for anybody. But I do want to get into the questions. The audio seems to be working now. So the questions we had from the previous session was the one from Matthew, Doug, and he has stated that there was a report supported by the endowment that indicated a checkoff program to support training and education. Your thoughts on this?
I think that's a good idea. A checkoff program ought to be supported financially by the consuming meals. This is in principle and part owed to the supply chain nature of our business. Meals are closer to the retail sales, and the finished product marketing could be part of that checkoff system. I like the idea that internal training of loggers could be combined with external marketing of the retail product. And for most folks that know what a checkoff program, just a good example commonly used is the Got Milk program from the Dairy Council. So I think that'd be a good idea if we could figure out how to make that work financially for the industry.
Okay, great. Thank you, Doug. The next question is from Eric. He says, in South Carolina, there are more guys buying chippers, or are there more, I guess, logging companies buying chippers or grinders for biomass?
And Helene, I take that question to mean is there a preference of chippers over grinders? I'll make this answer generic to all states. Silica is a negative for any biomass plant. In the past, when we had a larger housing industry, construction going on, there was a number of folks in the grinding business where they were using right-of-way or lot clearings, and stump grinding was important as part of that clearing process, but it also produces high silica. It's the whole thing of garbage in equals garbage out. But if you've got clean woods material, then you've got clean biomass coming out. I believe if the procurement verifies the source of material, then everything's good to go, and they've got low levels of silica. But the question that they've got to address is how do I treat Joe's logging company with a grinder the same way as I would Sam's right-of-way clearing company that's got a grinder. Basically, it's the material that goes in. When you say that I'm not going to take grindings in the past, that could have been because of just the abundance of that high silica material from some of these other operations that may not necessarily been woods oriented. Chippers no problem there because the material that's going in a chipper, but you still have to differentiate between what type of material is going in a grinder.
Great, Doug. Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, it does depend on the technology as well. So if you got a boiler, a lot of these cogeneration boilers prefer a consistent fuel supply or chip. It has the same dimension. It's clean. Doesn't affect the boiler in a negative way. And I believe that a lot of these new biofuel facilities will also probably want the same material. Would you agree with that?
That's right. Yeah, they like uniform material when they can get it.
All right. The next question, Doug, is can you please talk about the current market scenario, the supply and demand of wood pellets, and especially for European markets?
We know that the European Union has determined that politically that they're going to move to biomass. They have basically eliminated coal for energy production. They're reducing their nuclear. They have no natural gas, and they don't have enough woody biomass domestically. So, I feel like we've got a good 10-year run in the wood pellet business. We're blessed that North Carolina in particular is the shortest distance across the Atlantic to the European Union. That's the primary reason we got colonized way back when. So, but we're very optimistic and very supportive of the wood pellet trend right now as it serves Europe.
Right. And elaborate on that for you, Doug. That's the 20% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions is what the European Union is pushing for.
Right. They've they've gotten on this the bandwagon of in the climate scenario, and have made some political decisions on carbon and CO2 reductions. We have not over here in the United States, but they've done it politically, and of course our commerce and our economy over here in forest products is going to benefit from that.
Yeah, and I agree. I believe the subsidies are in place till 2027, correct?
Yes, right.
Okay, Doug, the next question is, do you see any movement back to company crews happening? Has there been interest in such from the TMOs, public REITs, as well as bioenergy companies?
Well, as relates to company crews, there was a major move back in the 70s to eliminate company crews in our industry and go to principally 100% independent contractors, and that was done for a number of reasons. I don't see it coming back. I think it's more common for possibly a small family-owned sawmill to have its own company crew. That's very, very limited as far as a larger industry would be concerned. The issues with company crews are the same issues that corporate farming had versus going to independent farm producers. So no, I don't see that coming back. It's always an option for folks that want to jump in and do it. But I think there's enough of a track history since the 70s for folks to understand there was a reason that we moved all to independent contractors.
Okay, great, thank you. Next question is from David. What role will the Dogwood Alliance have in biomass mills locating in North Carolina?
The Dogwood Alliance has been very weak. Biomass plants create jobs in a truly sustainable manner with our industry. The Dogwood Alliance's attempt to influence European policy is almost laughable. We don't see them at the meetings. Besides their website, they really don't have a strong presence at all. The main factor in our favor is that the jobs that are being created are in rural areas where these plants are being located. So we have the local politicians behind us as far as improving their economy. North Carolina still has a 10% average unemployment rate in rural areas, and any industry, particularly ours, of a sustainable nature that can bring jobs to these areas are being welcomed. So no, we don't see any negative influence from the Dogwood Alliance. Nothing nothing that we think will impact us moving ahead.
Okay, next question from Donald Murphy. It says logger unions have been talked about in the past. Do you think logger unions would help or hurt the logging situation in the South?
Well, first of all, collective bargaining is done by unions comprised of employees working for a single company. Loggers are independent contracts, so unions are an impossibility. It's also illegal to have a timber buying or selling cooperative in the United States. Not so for other commodities such as milk, tomatoes, or orange juice. So, you know, just to answer the question directly, I really can't answer the question whether it'll help or hurt the logging situation, because logger unions are not possible.
All right, next question is from David. He says, the Germans are pulling back from renewable energy because of cost. Will other European countries do the same?
Well, just looking at some recent articles that came out of Germany, they are high energy users like the U.S. They are truly committed to renewables, but their focus is on wind and solar and not biomass. One of their problems is that 35% of the electricity generated in Germany is done by individuals. They don't follow the major U.S. utility company model. So, you know, my assumption is that the scale of biomass plants likely does not fit these individual owners. They're more likely to go for wind and solar units.
Okay, great. So next question is from Buck, and he wasn't able to chat yesterday, but he has the opportunity now to ask this question for you. He wants to know, what is the outlook for loggers who will work, well, I guess who would be willing to work on small landowner properties such as 20 acres?
I believe the outlook's good. In fact, it's happening right now and has for several years in North Carolina, where our North Carolina private landowners average about 45 acres a parcel. So there is a role for small, medium-sized logging crews, particularly if the value of the timber is there. You don't want to track that small. You're basically looking at a single deck setup. It works well for a 3-man rubberized crew. That's low to moderate in capitalization. A good professional logger can even expand to adjacent landowners once he's on that track, based on his reputation and quality of harvest. So just because you're working on 20 acres a day doesn't mean that that you might not be able to have an opportunity on an adjacent track or something nearby based on the quality of work that you do.
Okay, great. I actually have a question, Doug. So it seems like right now we may not have all the capacity we would need. Let's say if a biofuels facility located here in North Carolina, which there is an announcement for Chemtex in a couple of years. Maybe you can elaborate on that and whether that's going to be a problem, or are they going to be able to still procure the feedstock that they need?
You know, as with many new companies coming into the state, they eventually get around to making contact with us. So we've actually had discussions with a number of them, you know, talking about whether they've got available feedstock in the area. We've actually been able to, of course, work with you all here at NC State and Cooperative Extension on feedstock and resource analysis. We've been able to address logging capacity in the areas that they're interested in, ways that material is procured in the South. It's always better to try to fit your procurement plan into what folks are doing in the area. So we've had discussions with them on that. But I think the outlook's good, Helene, for folks. You know, we've got plenty of material in North Carolina available for lots of folks, and we're just again is trying to further economic development for our members. We're all about new markets and also supporting our traditional markets. You
think it's I guess okay, since it seems like the the housing is coming around, but it seems to be at a very kind of slow pace. So do you think it may be an issue if we kind of have this whole bubble again like we did a couple of years ago?
When you talk about biofuels, they're still working out the technology, although there's some good examples in Europe of cellulosic ethanol. But it's going to be a game changer when it comes, because that's going to be a high value product, basically using anything that's carbon based as a material. So we're encouraged that this may be a big game changer for our landowners and our logging force as it moves forward.
Okay, great. So I guess it may just end up kind of working itself out unless there's a huge increase in traditional markets, is I guess what I was trying to ask you. Would we be able to get enough loggers to meet those demands?
And again, I think currently it's not necessarily a question of competing feedstock. It's a question of competing loggers based on the logging force that we have and where they're going to be delivering to. So I think that's one of the immediate concerns kind of driving the whole question.
Is there anything else that's coming into play, Doug? Is a lot of people getting ready to retire, and maybe their sons or other family members may not want to be in the industry anymore, and they're going to college? Is that a problem?
Well, logging's always been a family-based business. If there's profitability there, then I think these family generations will continue to stay in logging. There's a lot of qualities, high quality of living in rural areas in the South. I think it's not going to be a trend for folks that have grown up with an urban background to suddenly decide they're going to go out and work in rural communities as a logger. I think our future loggers are always going to be based in a rural environment, because that's the quality of life and what they appreciate. So I think anything that has to be done, whether it's equipment operator training, whether it's trying to help folks go into business, I think all that's going to be done from a rural setting.
Oh, Doug, did you miss that question?
What's that, Helene?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't have my mic on. The question I had was, our logging companies, they want to expand and kind of meet this, these new markets and this demand. Are they having a hard time, I guess, getting the financing needed to maybe purchase new equipment? Is that a problem that they're facing right now?
Well, if they're good, as I mentioned before, if they're a professional logging company that's been in business for years, they've probably got a pretty good record on the equipment purchases. Your financial institutions are looking at a number of parameters before they finance folks. For someone who's been purchasing hundreds of thousands of dollars and millions of dollars of equipment in their past and has got a good track record, I don't think there'll be a problem. New folks coming in, there's going to be some extra scrutiny on that. They're going to have to demonstrate they've got a business model, that they've got markets identified, and they can make it happen. So I think there's an additional challenge for new folks trying to break into the business. But the established folks that have been there and possibly downsized earlier, I don't think there'll be a problem for them expanding.
Okay, great. It was a great discussion. So thank you, Doug, for coming in and doing this re-recording, so we can make it available for everybody. That way they can hear what you had to say about your slides instead of just reading them. I think it was great. We answered all the questions. If anyone has any more questions after hearing this, please feel free to contact Doug. Duncan there, his contact's on the screen here. And thank you for sitting in and listening, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Thank you.